This month's Patreon raffle review comes courtesy of Chan11. Thanks a lot, Chan11. I thought we were cool. There are many points in Cartoon Network's history that people don't look all too fondly on. Like the Tom 4 era of Toonami, that original point in time where Teen Titans Go was the hot new thing to hate. Or how's about that brief moment where they aired Woolin Warriors?
Woolin Warriors!
Ouch. But no moment in Cartoon Network's history seems to be as hated as that cursed second half of 2009, where Cartoon Network decided to stray away from its mission statement and instead of airing a slate of brand new cartoons, would air cheap, poorly made, live-action shows.
What the heck does that mean?
No, I don't really know.
Yes, my friends, welcome back to the horrors of your childhood known as CN Real. There are so many people on YouTube who talk about how terrible these were and how these shows were, generally speaking, pandering vehicles above everything else. And yeah, they're absolutely right. But no one really talks about what went into these shows and how they ended up being as bad as they were. Well, I'm about to fix that. Sit back, relax as much as you can, as we dive into the complete history of CN Real. Ugh, just that name freaks me out. Sends a shiver down my spine, you know? Oh boy. So, the story of CN Real starts off the way all stories of good things begin, with a bomb scare in a capital city. This was the Boston Bomb Scare. January 31st, 2007, Cartoon Network took to the streets of Boston putting up these Lite-Brite toys that were advertising the Aqua Teen Hunger Force: movie film for theaters. Only that's not how the city of Boston took it. Instead, they thought that these Lite-Brite toys were actually bombs that were planted all around the city. The subsequent fallout was so bad that Cartoon Network president Jim Samples was forced to resign. And in his place came Stuart Snyder, who just so happens to be one of the most disliked people in all of 2000's entertainment. Right away, Snyder seemed to have a real problem with all the creativity and ingenuity that Jim Samples had brought to Cartoon Network. So he took it upon himself to change everything. Though, if I'm going to be fair, Snyder did have some reason to be worried about Cartoon Network's future. Over the last year, Cartoon Network's ratings amongst 9 to 14-year-olds, you know their key demographic, dropped by 30%. Which meant that Cartoon Network had to make some changes and make them quickly, otherwise, they could end up going through what Nickelodeon would go through in 2012. Not helping was that advertisers were leaving the network in droves, specifically Coca-Cola and PepsiCo, who reduced their $5.3 million ad campaigns on Cartoon Network to only 2.3 instead. This was largely because of parental backlash because Pepsi and Coca-Cola are junk foods, or junk drinks I guess, and they didn't like seeing so many of their products being advertised to kids. And just saying, parents out there, if you don't like your kids drinking soft drinks, here's a thought, don't buy them. We know that advertising played a big role in CN Real's development because Stuart Snyder overplayed his hand during an interview saying, "We've seen the trends. We believe that by diversifying and providing more live action or even sports content, we'll have the ability to deliver new advertisers to the network." By the way, that didn't turn out so well, but you'll learn why at the end. He started by taking a look at his two biggest competitors, Disney Channel and Nickelodeon. Not only did they have a wide array of cartoons that kids all over the country and, hey, even all over the world, seemed to absolutely adore, but they also had some cheap, well-made live-action shows that were getting the kids just as excited. Snyder knew what he had to do. He had to make room for some live-action projects to go on Cartoon Network. This was despite the fact that Reanimated, a live-action animation hybrid that debuted on Cartoon Network the year prior, was met with some very poor reviews. That and the television spin-off Out of Jimmy's Head being considered one of the worst shows of all time. Nevertheless, Stuart Snyder persisted and decided that Cartoon Network should house both cartoons and live-action entertainment. Snyder brought on Rob Scorcher to head the CN Real project, and while this seemed like a good idea on paper since, he's responsible for developing Breaking Bad, he was also responsible for torpedoing the reputation of AMC. I wonder what outcome happened to Cartoon Network. But in order to make room for these new live-action shows, tons of cartoons were met with an untimely demise. These included Hi Hi Puffy Amiyumi, Squirrel Boy, and as we've discussed previously this month, Class of 3000. When these cancellations started happening, onlookers began to grow suspicious. Surely Cartoon Network was up to something good, right? If they're getting rid of all these shows, they must be making way for maybe even a brand new line of cartoons. But no, Cartoon Network announced that they were gonna make live-action shows, and the outrage was immediate. Some questioned why Cartoon Network was airing live-action shows whatsoever. Some doubted that the quality of these shows would be any good since they seemed to be made on the cheap. But 9 times out of 10, when you talk to somebody, they would say something along the lines of, "This is probably going to be one of the worst decisions that Cartoon Network ever made." But that's not always the case. There's always that one contrarian in every crowd, and that contrarian in this case was a writer who will remain anonymous from the Los Angeles Times who wrote, "As in the past, the current incursion of flesh and blood into the network's formerly fully 2D Tooniverse has been met with dismay by, mostly adult, animation fans and CN purists. I was about to write that it is a hot topic of debate, but really, there is no debate at all. Just a collection of complimentary assessments posted on various internet message boards as to why this is a bad direction to take. The point might be made that these shows, by definition, have not been created for that particular audience, but to serve younger, less particular CN viewers, and perhaps to steal a few new ones from Nickelodeon and the Disney Channel." Did this anonymous writer turn out to be correct? Was this a bold new direction that would help revitalize Cartoon Network's lineup? Nope. I'll talk about what exactly went down afterwards, but now it's time to get into these shows one by one and talk about what makes them tick. Let's start off with an easy one. Ghost Hunter, The Othersiders. This was about a group of kids who would explore supposedly haunted areas in California, and that's the show.
If you remember, when you were doing call and response, I did get a really weird pain in my back. My back. But I think my back just cramped up.
Yeah, the Ghost Hunters joke I made a few seconds ago was more than just a joke. This was a blatant ripoff of a semi-popular show, only this time, it was made with kids in the lead, and also made on the cheap. Now, look, I can make fun of ghost hunters all day. Those people will claim that anything is a ghost. Like this. You see that? That's the work of a ghost.
Resounding yes.
But imagine Ghost Hunters, but with a less qualified, cheaper writing staff and worse actors to help portray the illusion of fear or supernatural environments. And then you've got The Othersiders. Yes, Ghost Hunters has writers. The Othersiders has writers as well. All reality shows have writers, actually. When it comes to reality shows like The Othersiders, for example, instead of being given a script with lines, stage direction, sound cues, and all that sort of stuff, you're given an outline instead, and sometimes even a list of plot beats that should happen in each scene. And then it's up to the quote-unquote participants, definitely not actors, to help carry that out. Cartoon Network saw The Othersiders as a bold new direction to take, even when you exclude the fact that it's a live-action show. See, The Othersiders was generally darker than most of the things Cartoon Network would air. The closest we ever got to something like this is Goosebumps, and even then, that's still pretty campy and low budget. During the Halloween season, Cartoon Network would promote The Othersiders every chance it got. But all those cryptic ads and cliffhangers within said cryptic ads did nothing to help The Othersiders' ratings. It got 2 seasons, technically. It's really just 1 season that they split up into 2. The series lasted 4 months due to low ratings, and then faded away, never to be heard from again, much like a ghost. And they got really desperate towards the end. They had things like giveaways and raffles for your own ghost hunting equipment, but it still didn't help the show catch on. Kids just weren't interested in seeing other kids go hunting for supposedly real ghosts. But okay, maybe that was just one misfire, right? Cartoon Network will get it right eventually, like with Brain Rush. This is Cash Cab if it was on a roller coaster. I still can't believe this is the only one I liked as a kid. Going back to watch it now, one thing is very clear. It's fake. The show tries to really sell that whole realism angle with the host rolling down to Knott's Berry Farms, meeting a random lucky kid who's gonna be a contestant on Brain Rush, and the kid would have to answer trivia questions on a wild roller coaster ride. But it all comes apart in the execution. 1, these kids are not good actors. When they get told, surprise, you're a contestant on Brain Rush, they're all like,
Really? Oh my god, no way.
Wait, are you serious?
I am.
Are you serious?
You want to do that?
Oh, yeah.
You sure?
Oh, yeah, I'm ready.
And 2, you also have the kids answering difficult questions that I'm not even sure adults can answer.
How many days was the camel in gestation? How many volcanoes in Hawaii? What is the top speed of the boomerang? How many islands make up the state of Hawaii? Who is the male host of America's Best Dance Crew?
Not like it really means anything that this game is rigged though, because the cash prizes are pathetic. You get like what, $100 for appearing on the show if you're lucky? Once again, just like the other Siders, not only is this a ripoff of an established property for adults, but its production costs are very low, especially when you give out peanuts for prizes. Which makes it even sadder that this is one of the shortest lived shows on the CN Reel lineup. Yeah, despite Brain Rush having no budget whatsoever, it couldn't last longer than 6 episodes. I'd say I feel sorry for you, Brain Rush, but I don't. Next, we've got Les Stroud hosting Survive This. Great to see Les Stroud is ripping off his own show. Yes, Les Stroud went from Survivor Man to this. Survive This, if you will. Stroud decided to base this show around challenges that he himself personally went through. The first season involved a slate of actors, and I know they're actors because there was a casting call for actors specifically. Anyways, these actors would get stranded in the Ontario wilderness and would face a series of challenges, and at the end of each one, they would be asked if they wanted to go home and call it quits.
No, I don't want to give up.
The problem with this show is that, while yes, the contestants are actors, they were not prepared for what they were about to endure. It's clear that if this show had a script, it was very loose. It got so bad that these kids would have to squeeze water from moss in order to get hydrated. While it seems like the kids who were on this show had a good time looking back, they do not like how the show was presented. A couple of the actors have come forward since the show's airing, and have said that the way that the show was edited was very misleading. There would be private conversations that were aired on the show, many interactions and situations were blown out of proportion or re-edited to make a narrative that the network wanted, which is not uncommon. This stuff happens all the time on adult reality TV, but these are kids. They're not exactly used to having that happen. That concern was entirely ignored. But what wasn't ignored is that they couldn't have another group of unprepared kids take on Survivor Man's challenges. Les Stroud decided, for one, they were gonna be real kids and not actors next time, and 2, before they went anywhere, they were gonna have to take a 3-week survival course. The survival course paid off, but according to one of the kids on the show, because they didn't use actors in season 2, they didn't fully grasp what they were signing up for. For the first half of their time, they didn't take the show seriously whatsoever. In the end, they had fun and grew as people, but still the show was edited to oblivion. But with all this manufactured and real-life drama being put into one half-hour show, did Survive This end up taking off? Not one bit. In fact, Cartoon Network burned these episodes off very quickly just so that they could get rid of the show as quickly as possible. Now on to Destroy! Build! Destroy! Perhaps the most famous of the CN Reel shows, and the one with the best reception, being that most people consider it, Rockstar Andrew WK, who just so happened to be CN Reel's spokesman, hosted a show where teams of kids would destroy things, build devices out of the things they destroyed, then work together to destroy the other team's creation. Sounds like a fun premise overall, and yeah, watching the show is kind of fun. You get the idea pretty quickly though, and there's only so many times you can watch stuff blow up before it gets boring. But I don't know, Andrew WK has his charm, and the kids seem like they're having a good time, and that's what many of the people at the time noted as well, at least in comparison to the other shows. Given that it was a live-action show on Cartoon Network, most people, generally speaking, didn't give it the time of day. But it must have worked enough because Cartoon Network gave this show not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 seasons overall. Not very long seasons. But even so, over its 2-year run, Destroy Build Destroy got 4 seasons, and was marketed very strongly.
Zoinks! It's the cast of Scooby-Doo versus Mr. Bean!
And you get to use my credit card to spend as much money as you want trying to defend it. If the Lamborghini survives, you have a brand new...
Destroy, Build, Destroy! Cartoon Network!
While Destroy Build Destroy wasn't a bomb per se, you can tell that Cartoon Network always wanted it to be something bigger than it was. It didn't exactly work, but you gotta give them credit for trying. Same thing goes for Dude, What Would Happen? A Mythbusters knockoff starring 3 guys who ask the question, Dude, what would happen if I did something really ridiculous or dangerous?
Dude, he's smoking.
Dude, What Would Happen was also a moderate hit, and it was renewed for 2 more seasons on Cartoon Network. Though promotion seemed to die down as time went on, and the show was quietly dropped instead of being renewed for a 4th season, with Cartoon Network giving 0 fanfare for the show's ending. While it lasted just about as long as Destroy Build Destroy did, its seasons were shorter, only having 13 episodes apiece, probably because the things that the dudes would do were significantly more expensive than having kids destroy, build, and destroy things. And now we come to the last show on CN Real, Bobby Says, and it's about Bobby J. Thompson of That's So Raven fame, watching videos, giving his input, and this is Tosh.0, isn't it? Well, maybe. It is quite similar, but here's the thing. Tosh.0 only premiered a couple months earlier. Was that really enough time for Cartoon Network to rip it off? Well, if you're gonna ask me, I'd say yes. Yes, it is. First of all, industry people talk, especially in press releases, so I can imagine Cartoon Network coming across this information and going, we can do that too, but for kids, and somehow even cheaper. Tosh.0 on its own was already inexpensive to make, so Cartoon Network would jump at the chance to have this show as well. There's also the fact that, with a show as simple and easy to make as Bobby Says, I could imagine that the turnaround time from filming to airing would be pretty quick. Of course, all of this is speculation, none of this is proven, but this is just what I interpret from the situation. But as it stands, Bobby Says lasted 6 episodes like Brain Rush, and for the most part is lost media, but most people say that it's media worth being lost. And those were the shows on CN Real. There were some other live-action shows later, like Tower Prep, Unnatural History, or other such assorted live-action shows, but they weren't part of the CN Real block. Maybe Unnatural History and Tower Prep were supposed to be later on, but the block didn't live on long enough for that to happen. These shows did nothing to help Cartoon Network. As many people predicted, they were commercial and critical failures, with hardly any of them lasting longer than half a year.
I don't get it.
Once Cartoon Network got the returns for CN Real, they killed the block as quickly as they could,
Destroy them.
and then put out feelers for some brand new animated shows to help pull them back out of this mess. And boy did they find them! They got these 2 little known shows, I don't know if you've ever heard of them, Adventure Time and Regular Show. And these 2 changed everything. A brand new Cartoon Network renaissance, new creator-driven cartoons, and no live-action shows in sight except that one or that one, but no one really paid them much attention. And it seems like they understood that the reason that CN Real failed was because the shows were not only uninteresting, but also the fact that the kids that were watching Cartoon Network were a lot smarter than they originally thought. Kids know when they're being pandered to. You can't just slap a kiddie label on a pre-existing reality show, cut the budget in half and fill it with a bunch of kids that can't act. That's not gonna fly. What made live-action shows on the other networks work, shows like That's So Raven, Drake and Josh, iCarly, and the like, were fun characters, interesting situations, witty, albeit sometimes repetitive writing, and good acting. You can tell that, more often than not, the people behind these shows had a vision. They legitimately cared about their product. Those that made CN real were just trying to make a quick buck. No effort, no passion, nothing. The closest one that came to anything legitimate seemed to be Survive This, as Les Stroud believed in what he was making. He wanted to pass his knowledge down to a new generation, and honestly, if this aired on something like Discovery Channel or something else like that, and with different management, it could have been a pretty good show. Similarly, Destroy Build Destroy and Dude What Would Happen could have also been less one note. These three shows could have been decent successes had they been on another channel. But as for things like Bobby Says, Brain Rush, or The Othersiders, they were dead on arrival. Heh, dead, 'cause ghosts. No. To their credit, Cartoon Network was very quick to realize that people just didn't like CN Real. Rob Scorcher had this to say: "All these changes are painful. The people who are deep fans don't want it." Had the CN Real plan been a success, there was some talk about changing the name from Cartoon Network to, well, we don't know, but something that didn't have cartoon in the name because eventually, that wasn't going to be their main focus. Thankfully, Stuart Snyder wasn't in favor of changing the name, but he was in favor of keeping live-action shows around just in case one of them ended up being a hit. According to Snyder, what they would do is keep a couple live-action shows on the channel, promote them like crazy, and if one of them were to catch on, there would be similar shows following in their wake. And eventually, there would be another rise of CN Real, only this time, filled with shows that both kids and advertisers would love. You know, instead of neither. And that was the tale of CN Real, one of the most evident cases of, I want to try something new. No, go back! Luckily, this isn't a lesson that Cartoon Network has soon forgotten. As once Incredible Crew met its untimely demise, there were no more live-action shows on Cartoon Network, and hopefully, it stays that way. Because the last thing we need is a return to Cartoon Network's Dark Age. Well folks, thanks for watching the video. What'd you guys think? What did you think of the story of CN Real, and what was your favorite and or least favorite show on the block? Comment below and let me know because I'm always excited to hear what you guys have to say. And now it's time to thank our wonderful Patreon people, starting with our Masters of Fate. Chan 11, Drew the Stew, Kev Messick, MD the Dude, Platinum Bass, Quiet Chap, Ryan Williams, Timey, and Woody Woo. And now our executive producers, Aaron Vasquez, Albert Robinson, Blackjack, HR Huffman, Indiscreet One, Orsinus, Ravioli Supremo, Unkale, and who else but Zane. If you too would like your name read at the end of every Media Mementos video, then why not consider donating to the Patreon? There's a fancy little link in the description below for you to check out. And if you want to get more involved in the Media Mementos fan community, down there we've also got a link to the Media Mementos Discord server, so stop on by and say hello. Alright folks, thanks for watching the video and I'll see you guys next time.
What's your name? Trevor?
Oh boy.